Hey gang, it's Squill, and I often find myself thinking about when the turning point in Adventure Time was, specifically in its tone. When did the show go from just another silly cartoon to a show that could take itself seriously while still being silly and absurd? Some would say it came from the Nightosphere and the way it tackles Marceline's strained relationship with her father. Others may argue Holly Jolly's secrets and the earth-shattering reveal of the Ice King's backstory. But while these are both perfectly valid answers, if I were to pick the turning point in Adventure Time's tone, it would have to be Mortal Folly and Mortal Recoil, and the introduction of the Lich. For a character who only appears in about 10 episodes, it's shocking just how much of an impact the Lich has on the series as a whole. This made me interested in taking a look at the Lich and the way he evolved alongside Adventure Time. This is how the Lich changed Adventure Time. Believe it or not, despite being the Lich's first major role, Mortal Folly isn't actually the first appearance of the Lich, as we briefly see him getting kicked by Billy during the musical sequence in His Hero, although here he's referred to as the Lich King, as he also is in the show's original pitch bible. I personally find just the Lich on its own to be far more intimidating, so I'm glad they dropped the King part of his name. Although this scene is brief, I do find it interesting how the show continually ties the Lich back to Billy, despite never actually showing us the encounter between the two. In Mortal Folly, it's revealed that Billy sealed the Lich in amber after defeating him. And in the same episode, Finn is given Billy's gauntlet to defeat the Lich. The Lich then possesses Billy in the Season 4 finale. Heck, even Billy's bucket list comes right before the Lich's return and wake up and escape from the Citadel, despite the episode being largely disconnected from the events of those two. The Lich's connection to Billy is always something I thought the show could have explored a little more in depth, though it might be better left as a bit of a background detail. It's kinda hard to tell sometimes. Anyways, going back to Mortal Folly, as I stated earlier, the Lich's introduction here really impacted the show's tone. The Lich was the first major threat that Finn and Jake had to take down, which makes his appearance here feel very exciting. Finn and Jake even state this to be their first Fate of the World deal. And going back to the series pitch bible, the Lich is very clearly stated to not be funny. He doesn't give over-the-top monologues or have goofy henchmen. He is the pure embodiment of evil. He wants nothing but to destroy all life as we know it, and he will do anything to achieve that. And the episode contrasts that beautifully with the Ice King's silly antics to marry Princess Bubblegum. Ice King is everything the Lich isn't as a villain, not just because he's comedic, but because he's a genuinely sympathetic person who has a reason to do what he does. Contrast that with the Lich, who is really much more of a force than an actual character. He doesn't have a sympathetic backstory or even really a reason to destroy life as we know it. He's just pure unbridled evil and he revels in it. So it's actually kind of fitting that Ice King is the one who ultimately defeats him at the end of Mortal Recoil. Ice King doesn't really play a part in any future Lich appearances, but I do find it interesting how the Lich is what inadvertently started the Ice King's character development, as this is the first time in series history in which he and Finn would team up. And I'm highlighting the Ice King so much because this contrast was intentional. The Lich is supposed to be cold, lifeless, and unsympathetic, and Ice King was the perfect character to help highlight that. The Lich is ultimately defeated at the end of Mortal Recoil, however, is still seen at the end of the episode possessing the snail. Not only was this a really clever way to incorporate the background snail into the actual plot of the show, but it's also a great way to let the audience know that the Lich is still in the picture. As while the Lich is mostly absent throughout Season 3, he still technically appears in every episode because of the snail. He still appears with green eyes like he did at the end of Mortal Recoil, indicating that he's still possessed by the Lich. It's a very minor detail that you really have to be looking for in order to pick up on, but it's a great subtle reminder to the audience that the Lich is still out there and could return at any moment. The snail continues to appear this way throughout Season 4, however, here is where we start getting foreshadowing to the Lich's actual plan. Most notably at the end of In Your Footsteps, where he receives the Enchiridion from the bear Finn and Jake were hanging out with throughout the episode. I have very mixed thoughts on the Lich's appearance here, because I definitely like getting foreshadowing for the Lich's true plan. I think a scene like this works on paper, but in the context of the actual episode, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you're telling me the Lich knew that Finn would feel sorry for this bear and give him the Enchiridion? I don't know, it just doesn't really sit right with me, and I'm not sure how much the Adventure Time crew really thought about the implication here. The Lich also makes an appearance through Finn's vault in King Worm. The imagery here of him having coffee with Princess Bubblegum gets me every time. We also get some foreshadowing for Farmworld Finn from the dimension where the Lich doesn't exist. And that brings us to the Lich's next appearance in the Season 4 finale, simply titled The Lich. I really like the body horror angle to the Lich's appearance here. With the way Billy's face is ripped in half with the other half being the Lich's face, it's so messed up. And I love the way this completely screws with Finn's psyche. I mean, to see your hero, the person you idolized and looked up to most, killed and possessed by your greatest enemy whom you were manipulated into helping, that's gotta take a toll on him. But it's a great expansion on the Lich's previous appearance and just a crazy twist overall. But what's even crazier about this is that for a short period of time, the Lich actually won. He got his wish and destroyed all life as we know it. Granted, this was obviously undone shortly after, but even still, for a short period of time, everyone except Finn, Jake, and Prismo are basically dead. That's kinda raw. I don't really have too much to say about the Farmworld timeline yet, we'll get back to it later, but I will say that the Lich managing to pop up in a timeline in which he shouldn't exist makes him all the more terrifying. The Lich is absent throughout the rest of Season 5, however, we check in on him again at the start of Season 6. Jake undoing the Lich's wish essentially leaves him in a standstill in which he can't really do anything. Part of me wonders if he was waiting for an opportunity to do something again, or if he had just flat out given up at this point. Despite that, these two episodes are easily the peak of the Lich's character for me. I mean, him killing Old Man Prismo, hijacking Finn and Jake's trip to the Citadel, corrupting and breaking free all of the prisoners, and his speech, man, it's so good. Ron Perlman's excellent vocals and delivery, the Lich's skin being entirely ripped off his body, him and Finn both being surrounded by blackness. Not to mention the body horror that occurs shortly after, it's just a perfect scene. But it also signifies a turning point in the character. I mean, where do you really go from here? And unfortunately, I don't think any of the Lich's future appearances quite live up to Escape from the Citadel. Thanks to the newts that Finn throws at him, the Lich is essentially turned into a baby named Sweet Pea. I definitely like the irony here. The most evil character in the show being rebirthed into this sweet, innocent baby. It's a fun idea. And the idea of the Lich still existing within Sweet Pea is further explored in Gold Stars. This Lich appearance is actually pretty unique for the show, both because it's his first major appearance that doesn't involve Finn and Jake, as well as because it's his first appearance outside of a 2 or 3 part episode. It's pretty standalone, all things considered. And as brief as it is, it's an excellent appearance by him. Definitely lifts up an otherwise pretty dull episode. Our next big Lich appearance after that is in Season 7's crossover, but unfortunately it's definitely one of his weaker roles. He's easily overshadowed by Farmworld Finn, who's just a far more interesting character at this point. There isn't really much that can be done with the Lich that we haven't already seen before, compared to Farmworld Finn, who we've only barely scratched the surface of. A part of me also wonders if this episode breaks the Lich isn't funny rule the show sets up in the series' pitch bible, with his head being on Jake's body and all. I don't think it does, his appearance is mostly played straight outside of this, but it's definitely the closest they ever come. During the episode, the Lich Hand is duplicated and sent throughout all of the multiverse, setting up his final appearance in the main show. That being in Season 9's Whispers. Though much like Farmworld Finn in Crossover, I find Sweet Pea's arc in this episode to be far more interesting than the Lich himself. It's so interesting seeing him try to reconcile with the fact that the Lich is still within him. I think it's an excellent direction to take the character in, and it's something I wish the show explored more. Heck, I even like that Sweet Pea is the one to defeat the Lich at the end. I do also appreciate the show returning to the Lich as well. Having his final main series appearance call back to his first appearance is a nice full circle moment. Though unfortunately, the Lich Hand itself just isn't particularly intimidating, at least not compared to the Lich's previous appearances. And his shadow appearance isn't that much better. And the show is self-aware of this too. Finn even says, "You're so evil, it's boring." which I suppose is why I was fine with Gulp being the main villain in Come Along With Me. I mean, at this point, what more could the show have really done with the Lich? He had kind of already worn out his welcome by this point. So I think it was the right call to give payoff to Gulp, a character we barely even knew about at this point. However, we would get one final appearance by the Lich in the Distant Land special, Together Again. I think what works about the Lich's role here compared to his other post-Escape from the Citadel appearances is the surprise factor. Going into this episode, I had no idea the Lich would be making an appearance here, because why would he? We already have a villain in the form of New Death. But him being puppeted by the Lich Hand just makes perfect sense, since not only was it foreshadowed at multiple points in the episode, but New Death's plan to get rid of the Dead Worlds and break the Wheel of Reincarnation really does line up with the Lich's plan to get rid of all life. And it also makes perfect sense for Finn and Jake's final adventure together to culminate in their final Lich fight. I also love this little animation sequence with all the various Lich forms throughout the series, it's really cool. I still wouldn't argue this is quite up there with the Lich's appearances from Mortal Folly to Escape from the Citadel, since the episode puts much more emphasis on Finn and Jake's character drama than the Lich itself. That, and the fact that the Lich's defeat is a little anticlimactic, even if it does make for an admittedly funny joke. But this is still easily his best appearance since Escape from the Citadel, and shows that the character can still be done well. For as much as the later Lich appearances don't quite live up to the earlier ones, I still appreciate and admire the character as a whole. In a time where it feels like we're getting much more sympathetic and redeemable villains in media, it's just nice to have a character like the Lich who's just pure evil. His physical appearance combined with Ron Perlman's vocal delivery is capable of sending chills down my spine almost every time he appears. He's easily one of the most memorable villains in Adventure Time, and while he technically could return in Fiona and Cake, considering a version of him exists in every dimension now, I personally consider Together Again to be the perfect send-off for him, and would like the show to retire the character here. But we'll have to see how they handle him going forward. Please let me know your thoughts on the Lich and what your favorite appearance of his is in the comments. Squill out.